Yeah, this is passed by Matic.
Pass from Sumek against Matic.
Oh, sorry.
And a great battle these two have been having while we've been watching the leaders. We're going to replay that battle now. These two have been passing and repassing.
Yeah, it's going back and forth all the time.
Yeah, there's just so many possibilities to make mistakes on this track. It's an absolute classic, this track. Up there with some of the great tracks we've had this year. I think my favourite has to be Embry. But there's also Africa. All those fantastic tracks that have been made. There have been a few duds. Natrios was pretty poor, although it was great to drive. Meanwhile, here's Mr. Palmer, a bit of contact with Lex into turn 1. Now that wasn't really a fair move. But as I was saying about the tracks, as we see you passing Wockinger, you'll have your chance to vote later in the competitions for 2011 F1 League season. You can vote on best track, best pass, best driver, etc. all throughout the year, and it'll be really interesting to see what you viewers think on that. So here's the championship predictions as of lap 24, just 12 laps left in the 2011 season. And Dede is solidly in front, as he has been from the start of this race. Dede has mounted an incredible comeback after a terrible first 2 races. He's come back all the way to be leading the championship going into the final race.
Yeah.
And looks like, barring problems, I don't want to curse him, barring problems, he's got this championship where he wants it right now. Meanwhile, it's a battle for the 4th position until Lawrence is pitted. So Lawrence is on his 2nd stop of 2. So actually, if he can make a very fast few out laps, then actually you can probably stay ahead of Atmill. We'll have all the tyres on him, but it's a possibility. He's out in 6th, just behind Pablinio. Pablinio has to pit again, everybody else has to pit again. Meanwhile, here's our leader Eddie making a few mistakes there. And Lawrence now battling with Mike Nike. Lawrence just keeping ahead of him there. He's really got to set a few fast out laps. Meanwhile, here's the battle between Šimek and Matic continuing. Oh, Matic running wide on pit entry.
Yeah, probably going for an overtake, but...
yeah, can't really overtake on the entry to pit lane. That's a bit of a tight spot.
Yeah.
And we can see a very long pit stop from Matic too. Losing a lot of time to Šimek, perhaps going for fuel to the end of the race.
Yeah, this first move was maybe just a bit too ambitious.
Just a little.
Just a little.
Meanwhile,
too much though. Anyway.
Here we are on board with Dede, who's making mistakes, and so is Atmill there in the background. So Dede making mistakes, trying to catch Silso perhaps for the 2nd position.
So fuel is critical.
And maybe that is why he's making mistakes. He could be distracted by a fuel issue. This could be what Eddie needs to snatch back the 2011 championship for his own. Drama here at the end of the 2011 championship. Will Dede pit for fuel? He doesn't have to. They've put in a gamble. They could get him to the end on 2 stops, and then he could claim the 2nd position, or perhaps even win the race. Because Eddie and Silso both have to stop again. It's 10 seconds at the moment, so if Dede could keep this gap, he could win the race. It's a choice between winning the race and gambling the whole of the championship on a finish like Silso's we saw in the European Grand Prix. We saw he ran out of fuel and fell all the way back to 8th or 9th position, I believe. And if that happened to Dede, then Dede would lose the championship. So he's really got a choice now. But the drama is stepping up late in this race. And even if he does pit, will that really compromise his strategy? Everything has to go smoothly for him. Meanwhile, Eddie in the pits. Silso will lead the race. So Eddie is out just behind Silso, and here goes Dede versus Eddie. Ooh, Dede runs wide. So Eddie's got out in front of Dede, so that means that Dede now has to pass Eddie on track if he wants to win the race. So Dede not going to win the race, but perhaps he could gamble for the second place, although I doubt it with the championship on the line. But even if he does pit, where will he fall back into? With Eddie winning the race, a gross miscalculation by the Plus team. They only had to fuel him for half a second more and he'd be fine to the end of the race, fine to get the second position, but they didn't do it, and now the championship is perhaps at stake.
That is very true. Yeah.
Mind you, for the Plus team, whoever wins it now, it looks like it's going to be a Plus team guy. It doesn't look like Pablino has much of a chance now, as Silsa comes out in the 4th position. Pablino just behind him there. I was going to say he's made a comeback. He was driven a solid second stint, back up to a top 5 position after being as low as P9 earlier in the race, but it's not what we wanted. Meanwhile, here's Shy Guy back and with Wockinger back in the midfield. They're going side by side off turn 4 and into the chicane. Shy Guy this time is the one that will make it up the inside into turn 5 and make the pass stick. Here's a bit later, and an incident, I believe, between Wockinger and Shy Guy we heard on the race radio, and an accident into turn 1. Let's see. Ooh, Shy Guy hit Wockinger there, did he? Or was it similar to Pablino earlier in the race?
Have to see slow motion here.
Oh!
And
that looked like no contact, but he still waited for him. This is a bit of a phenomenon we're seeing here. No contact, but yet the cars still seem to touch each other. Very strange. Perhaps it's something to do with the air being taken off the rear wing, perhaps?
yeah, this is really strange, but
Meanwhile, here's an inter-team battle there between the fun teammates Silsir and Pablino. Pablino probably has to pit again, to be honest. But maybe they changed his strategy, because obviously he wasn't having the best race. Perhaps they changed his strategy, made his pit stops longer, and perhaps to help him compete for a top 5 position, in which case that would be a clever call. Etma was out in 6th from his pit stop, and there's Lawrence just in front of him, so that will be a good battle towards the end of the race. Mike Nike is out in the 7th position. Mike Nike has driven a pretty unassuming last race of the season, considering he's competed for podiums this year. Quite rightly, he's a top player, and he's driven a pretty unassuming race. Meanwhile, here's Shy Guy and Wockinger continuing their battle after that beef, or was it a beef, from Shy Guy and Wockinger. Let's see what happens here. Wockinger not going for payback like we saw Kilka Wiki earlier in the race, but making a move off turn 4 and making one stick. Good move. Here is Etna then trying to catch Longs.